Namaste. I am you, and you are me. Welcome back.
Great to be diving in again.
Today we're really unpacking something fascinating. Law of One, Session 23, basically going through it question by question.
It's a rich one. It gets into the Confederation's early days on Earth, specifically Egypt and South America. Lots of insight there.
Exactly. And for everyone following along, our aim here is clarity. We want to explore this without it feeling, too dense. Expect some aha moments, I think.
Definitely. We'll touch on why they first came, where they seen, what was the deal with the pyramids, and even deeper stuff like why societies face challenges like disease. It covers a lot of ground.
Okay, let's jump right in. Question 1, 23.1. It asks about that first contact attempt in the third major cycle, around the time of Atlantis. Why Egypt specifically, and what was their attitude?
Right. Ra starts with their usual greeting in love and light. Then they talk about seeing this hawk-headed sun god worship Horus.
Hmm.
But they saw it as maybe a slightly distorted view of the sun's real significance.
So they observed that, and then...
Well, this is key. Ross says they scan the population, looking for a genuine spiritual seeking. They needed that calling, that readiness, so they could help without infringing.
Infringing. That word comes up a lot. What does it mean in their terms? Is it like causing harm?
Not exactly physical harm, no. It's more about interfering with a group's own free will, their own learning curve, even if you mean well.
So respecting their path.
Precisely. And back then, maybe 18,000 years ago, Ra found these conflicting beliefs in Egypt. Not really a unified spiritual search that resonated with what they offered. So they decided to, well, hold back, no direct intervention then.
Wow. That level of respect for free will is pretty profound. Okay, questions 23.2 and 23.3 follow up. Were they actually seen in the skies over Egypt, and what happened when they were?
Ra confirms, yeah, people saw their crystal-powered bell-shaped craft.
Bell-shaped craft. Okay, so did that cause a big stir?
Surprisingly, not really. Rock explains that Egyptian culture back then was, well, already full of gods and supernatural events. It was kind of normal for them.
So seeing a shiny craft wasn't that shocking?
Apparently not. It just sort of slotted into their existing worldview. It didn't fundamentally change things for them at that point. Culture shapes perception, right?
Absolutely. Which leads to questions 23.4 and 5. Why be visible at all then? Was there a reason for it?
Ra's answer is quite direct. They basically say, at that early stage, being visible or not did not make any difference.
Huh. So it wouldn't have helped their mission, but it also wouldn't have caused infringement either.
That seems to be the assessment, yeah. Their presence, even seen, wasn't potent enough yet to really push things one way or the other. A calculated risk, maybe?
Yeah.
Or just an observation that it was neutral.
Okay, so that was the initial phase. Question 23.6 then asks about the next attempt, a more involved one, it sounds like. What was the plan this time?
Yes, this is a bigger step. Ross says they sensed a sufficient calling later on, enough resonance to try walking among the Egyptians, like brothers.
Walking among them.
They proposed a plan to the Council of Saturn, this overseeing body. The idea was for service-oriented wanderers, beings aligned with Ra, to materialize directly into physical bodies.
Skipping birth and death.
Essentially, yeah. Appearing in forms that resembled their own nature, but physically present. The main goal, to teach the law of one directly.
Why then? What changed?
Ra mentions a growing interest among Egyptians in the sun body, which vibrated in sync with Ra's own energy. They saw an opening.
Okay, makes sense. But there was a problem, wasn't there?
A big one. Ross says for every word they spoke, their actual being transmitted about 30 other impressions, thoughts, feelings, data.
Whoa, like subconscious information overload.
Exactly. They intended transparency, full understanding, but it just confused people. Imagine trying to listen to someone while getting blasted with 30 other nonverbal messages simultaneously.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly difficult. So what happened?
They realized it wasn't working as planned. It was causing distortion, not clarity. So they withdrew again.
And rethought their strategy.
Right. They reflected on how best to serve. And they considered knowledge from Atlantis about pyramids and healing energies.
Ah, the pyramid connection.
Yes. So a second proposal went to the council. This time, the plan was to use pyramid structures to help with healing and longevity in Egypt.
The idea being that this would create a better environment for learning the law of one?
Precisely. More tangible, more experiential. And this plan got the green light from the council.
Okay, so this leads to the actual building of the pyramids. What's the timeline Ra gives?
They say the initial thought form work, the energetic blueprinting, started about 8,500 years ago.
Thought form first.
Yeah. Then the physical construction of the Great Pyramid, using local materials, began around 6,000 years ago, and other pyramids followed for about 1,500 years after that.
And alongside the building.
They were also sharing info on initiation practices using crystals for healing. It was a multifaceted effort.
Then the figure of Akhenaten comes into play. Ra speaks highly of him.
Very. They describe him as someone who could perceive their information with unusual clarity, very little distortion. He really tried to establish the law of one, restructuring the priesthood, focusing on unity.
But it didn't last.
Sadly, no. Rob points out that after Akhenaten's physical death, the teachings quickly got distorted again.
How so?
The pyramids, meant for healing and initiation, started being used by those seeking power, the elite. The original purpose got twisted. It shows how hard it is to keep spiritual teachings pure, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, question 23.7 focuses on that pyramid healing. The questioner guesses it was mainly for the mind.
Ra corrects that a bit. They say effective healing needs energy, these in-streamings, to flow clearly through the spirit complex first, then into the mind and body without major blocks.
So the mind is involved, but it's not the starting point.
Right, mind blockages can stop energy reaching the body, and everyone's blocks are different. But you need to activate that spiritual channel first.
And then healing can tackle blocks wherever they are spirit to mind, mind to body, or even just physical issues.
Exactly, it's interconnected. Spirit, mind, body, all linked.
Got it. Now, questions 23.8 and 9 go back to that thought form building phase of the Great Pyramid. Did the Egyptians know it was happening? Did they see this energetic construction?
Ra says there wasn't really close contact with most people during that phase. They were responding more to a general energy call from that location, sending thoughts to those already seeking.
So the physical pyramid showing up was a surprise.
A tremendous surprise is
Okay.
the phrase Ra uses. But its appearance was timed perfectly with the incarnation of a brilliant architect.
And that architect.
Was later revered, deified even, known by the name or sound vibration, Imhotep.
Imhotep. Wow, connecting the dots to recorded history there.
It's a fascinating link, yeah?
Okay, question 23.9. Looking back at the whole pyramid project, the questioner notes the limited success in raising consciousness overall, but asks, were there any successes from Ra's perspective?
Ra's view is really interesting here. They call themselves brothers and sisters of sorrow, showing their empathy. They say the concept of failure doesn't really apply when even one person is awakened to the Creator.
So individual awakening is the success.
Yes. Their difficulty, or honor responsibility as they put it, was dealing with the distortions that arose from their teachings. They see those distortions as their responsibility to help correct, not as a failure of the original mission.
That's a very different way of looking at success and failure.
It is. They acknowledge the paradox. Some were illuminated, others remained in confusion, using our terms. But their desire to serve never wavered.
Okay. Question 23.11 is a quick one about Henry Puharich, asking if he was involved somehow.
And Ra gives a firm but polite refusal to comment on him directly.
Why?
Because of Puharich's distortions, particularly his focus on needing external proof. Ra generally avoids commenting on specific individuals where it might interfere with free will or validate distorted views.
Right, sticking to their principles. Question 23.11 then asks about Akhenaten again, what happened to him after he died.
Ra describes the usual process for third-density souls healing, reviewing the life. They mention Akhenaten had that devotion to the law of one, but also those distortions towards power.
A conflict within him.
Seems so. And Ra says he chose, consciously, to go into future lives, specifically intending to work through and resolve those power issues. A glimpse into soul growth.
Fascinating. Then 23.13 and 14 get very practical. Average lifespan back then. Causes of disease.
Ra puts the lifespan around 35 to 50 years. Pretty short by our standard.
And disease.
Widespread. Ra initially says it's not super relevant to the law of one directly, but then gives earthly reasons. The Nile flooding causing insect diseases, bad food prep, contaminated water. Very practical, almost barbarous conditions, they say.
But the questioner pushes a bit deeper in 23.15, right? Asking for the root cause, linked to the law of one.
Yes, and Ra praises that insight correct and perceptive. They say the fundamental cause wasn't war, surprisingly.
What was it then?
It was the development of a money system, trade, and the greed and power-seeking that came with it.
Economics and spirituality linked.
Absolutely. This led to enslaving people, see others as less than, and fundamentally misunderstanding that the Creator is within every single being. That disconnect, Ra implies, was the root of much suffering, including disease.
Wow. That's a heavy insight connecting societal structures to spiritual health.
Okay, final big question, 23.16. The focus shifts to South America. Same questions, basically. Timing, attitude, results, plan, reasons.
Similar motivation as Egypt, Ross says. The people there also revered the sun and genuinely wanted to understand it better.
And who contacted them?
Light beings not unlike ourselves, is Ra's description. And interestingly, the teachings were apparently accepted more easily with fewer initial distortions than in Egypt.
What did they do differently there?
They guided the building of underground and hidden cities, also with pyramids.
Underground pyramids. Seems so. And these had a different purpose, more for meditation and rest. For all people, not just initiates or the sick like the Egyptian ones were intended. A different cultural application.
Interesting distinction. So the light beings left.
Yes, once the plans were set and recorded. Things progressed for about 3,500 years. But distortions did eventually creep in there too.
History repeating itself.
Somewhat. There was a breaking of quarantine later, and the entity involved had to get permission from the council for second try to correct the errors.
Did the second try work?
They returned with a messenger, corrected things, recorded it all again, and left. But sadly, the long-term outcome was similar to Egypt.
How so?
The teachings got grossly perverted over time, leading eventually to human sacrifice instead of healing. A terrible distortion.
That's incredibly tragic.
It is. And Ra adds that this social memory complex, the one that helped in South America, also carries that honor duty to stay connected until those specific distortions are worked through by humanity. A parallel to Ra's own situation regarding Egypt.
A heavy responsibility. Okay, the last few questions are brief. 23.17 and 18 are just checking on the instrument, Carla.
Right. Ra says her alignments are good, but she needs rest from the trance state for the day. Sensible advice.
And the very last one, 23.19, is, well, unexpected. About the movie Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, a bit random. The questioner asks if it had any Law of One elements.
And Ra says,
Ra confirms it had some distortions of the Law of One related to its physical plane story. Just a little acknowledgement that these ideas can pop up in culture, even if imperfectly.
Okay, and then Ra signs off.
Yes, with their beautiful closing. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adam.
Thank you for walking us through that session. So many layers. For me, what really stands out is that constant tension, that balance between the desire to help and the absolute necessity of respecting free will. It's such a delicate line they walk.
It really is. And the other thing is just how easily profound spiritual truths can get twisted once it enters human culture and interpretation. That challenge seems universal.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, maybe a thought to leave folks with.
Yeah.
How much are our own modern societal structures, our economies, our power dynamics still echoing those ancient patterns of distortion I described? The ones rooted in forgetting the creator within everyone.
Ooh, that's a deep one. If those patterns started so long ago and led to things like greed and division, then what does recognizing that lineage mean for us now? What's our responsibility with that knowledge?
Something to definitely ponder. Go forth in the love and light. We are you and you are us.